but I would love to see some. Okay. Yes. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Janae.
It's so good to be here with you today. I'm wondering if you are open to having a conversation. So much has happened since even our last meeting in February. And I'm just feeling a need to just pause and be really deliberate about connecting with you and all that we have shared in our early literacy coaching collaborative. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
To do? Thank you. I appreciate you. So since our last session, I have been thinking a lot about what it means for me to live into our coaching agreements. I've also been sitting in the feelings that come with that. There have been many, and they've shown up in other meetings and other learning sessions that I've been in as I sit with them and connect with them. And I think about these 4 agreements as providing the container for how we have this conversation about coaching. And in particular, when I think about taking care of myself, engaging fully and taking risks, being mindful of other learners, and opening myself to possibilities, I realized that these agreements are inviting me, my perceptions, and my worldview to be pressed on a little bit. Because what I'm recognizing is that the environments that I'm in don't always value these agreements, even though I'm coming into the environment with these agreements in mind, right? So there's a disconnect oftentimes. And in order to attend to that disconnect and really make these agreements a part of who I am, I need to pause. I need to pause, and I need in that pause to attend to what has taken place since we've started our journey on the Early Literacy Coaching Collaborative, or with the Early Literacy Coaching Collaborative, and where we are right now in the journey, and just connect with how I'm showing up in these agreements. How am I doing all of these things? Am I doing all of these things, or am I just saying them? Am I walking the walk, or am I just talking about it? So for the month of March, it's making me wonder what it would mean to pause from our monthly synchronous meetings to give ourselves some time to be with these agreements. You and me. Like, can we have a conversation about that now? Like, okay.
Yes, please.
Okay. So I'm going to just open with the question of taking care of yourself. Like, how are you doing that in all of this?
That is a good question. And I appreciate that these 4 are here, because I feel like sometimes self-care is a buzz phrase, the last year during this pandemic. And sometimes when things become a buzzword or a phrase, it loses meaning for me. So I really have to think, what does it look like to take care of myself? And I'm especially thinking this month of March is unique in a lot of ways, because as you shared with me earlier, the term COVID-versary is here. Like, we will have been in this pandemic, like, officially for almost a year. Next week, it'll be a year that we were all, sent home, and we started working from home. So for me, taking care of myself right now this month means being patient. Like, we've been in this a year. I really need to continue to be patient with myself, that we're still in a pandemic, and being patient, just reminding myself, like, yes, the vaccines are here, and I know that our colleagues are starting to get those now, and students are starting to return, and all the things that means for ourselves and our colleagues. And and just making sure that I have a balance of, physical balance. Like, am I getting exercise? Am I getting up out of the seat after hours of Zoom? Am I checking how much I'm on Zoom?
Mm,
Am I checking in with my mental health? If I have joy in my day every day, am I checking in with
yeah.
my family?
Mm,
And am I balanced as a learner? So you're right. I mean, ELK is new as a group, right? So there's still learning that I need to do in order to be myself and who I need to be in ELK. So I need to attend to my learning as well. So I guess that balance between all of those things combined with patience on this COVID-versary month.
mm. I so appreciate hearing you consider the relationship between finding balance and patience, um, and how that connects to the COVID-versary, that we are still in a pandemic. We've been in this pandemic for a year, and that there is still a need, um, as always, even more so now, to hold time and space for attending to our own patients. And that's part of taking care of ourselves. I really appreciate hearing that, because it affirms for me how I attend to that for myself. And um, and I have a sitting meditation practice. I get up and I move quite a bit, but I still find that I need to be conscious of breathing. I recently heard, I'm taking a master class with Elena, and she has a moment in our class, in our session, where she has a slide that she puts up that says pause and breathe. And she guides us in collectively taking 3 breaths consciously with each other, right? Just 3 breaths in and out. And that reminds me, she then pairs that with sharing that studies are showing that when we're on Zoom, we're breathing less.
Oh,
We're breathing less. We're doing something. I don't know if that means we're holding our breath or if we're just not attentive to how deep our breath is, but we're breathing less. So hearing that, one of the ways I am going to take care of myself, or continue to take care of myself, is becoming more conscious about my breath and where it is. And especially when I'm in Zoom spaces, but also when I get up and I step away from Zoom. Where is my breath? It's such a foundational practice of being human. Breathing. If we're not letting that pour into us, then we stop walking around. We're not able to. We pass out.
Right.
And so attending to that very fundamental part of who I am as a human being is something I plan to do as I continue to pour into myself in this masterclass about coaching for equity with Elena, and really giving myself time to be very aware of how she's designed the class so that we're practicing the agreements and what she's lifting up in this book, in this very rich book of experiences that she's had while coaching, and how she makes or illuminates for us how every conversation we have, coaching conversation we have, is about equity. It takes, I have to be really ready to engage in that because we're practicing in that class, and many of the things that she's sharing with us, we get time together to process and then practice. And so in order to be ready for that, I've got to pour into myself before I enter into that space. So I'm structuring my days so that I can attend to the pre-work before class, be ready for class when it's happening, when it takes place or when it starts. So I'm not scrambling to get ready because I have meetings stacked on top of it, and then giving myself time after class to process. That's my way of pouring into myself and taking care of myself. So I'm wondering, how does that impact engaging fully and taking risks for you, being patient and attending to balance in your life?
I see this a couple different ways too. So the engaging fully um, leads to taking risks. So if I engage fully, then I'm able to take risks. So I think of engaging fully as first, maybe with myself and my own learning. So I mentioned part of that balance is my own learning. So engaging fully with the resources I have, or maybe the ones that have been near me, but I haven't had a chance to partake in, or just looking at engagement in a different way. So does engagement always mean that I have to sit down with a book? Probably not. I'm always one as an English teacher that thinks I have to have the book in hand, and I have all these books behind me, and I don't really necessarily open myself to like digital or to audio, but I actually won an audio version, a digital audio version of Coaching for Equity. So I can engage
Mm,
with that in a different way. Maybe I can go outside for a walk and listen to it as I make my way past chapter 5 and 6.
mm,
So engaging in different ways. It doesn't always mean that I have to be sitting down in front of my computer or with a book. I can be active and engage in different ways and see what that opens my mind up to. And then that will enable me to take some risks in not only some new learning methods for myself, but being open to thinking about what that might look like for the educators that we work with and taking risks. By listening to them, by reflecting on what they say, I can show up differently. Um, and just be open to different ways for me to engage. I don't always have to be sitting here in front of this just because maybe that's been what I've been doing a lot the last year since we've been working and learning from
mm.
home. So intentional. I heard you mention intentional too, like being intentional about breathing,
Yeah,
which sounds like, well, of course we breathe, but are we intentional about the deep breaths?
yeah,
Probably not. So really
yeah.
having that reminder in front of me to do something differently and engage in a different way.
Mm. Oh, wow. Those are such gifts, such pearls. There's so many of them on the floor that you just dropped and want to stop and pick them up. Like, oh my goodness, they're just rolling around. Um, and um, what that sparks in me to to get intentional about paying about observing. Um, for me, engaging fully has been attending to my emotions and noticing them and learning to name them, um, and learning to name like the nuances of the emotions, the so not just angry or
Mm-hmm,
joyful, but like what's happening in between there,
mm-hmm,
right? And in doing that, engaging with myself fully more in that way, um, helps me to again, I mean, I guess it goes back to breathing, connect with how I'm feeling in that moment and what I might need, and then being able to articulate that, in places where I have, you know, very well established relationships, and in places where I'm just building relationships,
mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
they're new. um, I think about how when we started this conversation, I just like shared with you when you asked how I was feeling, like I shared, I've had several conversations since the start of this week that are just sitting with me. And I don't know how to name how I'm feeling yet. I just need to be. They're not good or nor bad. They are just big conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just honest with you, and took a risk in saying, I can handle doing this in our meeting today. And that's it. Right.
Right.
And just being able to name that for myself, um, that's a risk, because I'm showing up differently than I typically show up or have shown up in the past.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, Yet it's helping me to really be present for what we're doing, in this meeting. And I'm finding again, going back to breath, I have more room to breathe. I just
Right.
have more room to attend to being very aware of what I'm doing and deliberate and
Mhm,
intentional. And that feels invigorating.
mhm.
I'm taking care of myself in a whole nother way. And I now can be available to extend that to you when you need it or how you need it, because I'm attending to myself differently. So, yes, I appreciate that.
So it sounds like there's honesty and transparency in that. And if you're able to
Mm,
be honest and transparent, you're mindful of yourself, but then you're also mindful of others. Or
yeah,
you can be, you're open to being mindful of others because you took care of yourself in that way.
yes. And that all feels like a revolutionary act, resistance act, because the way our environments are set up, they're not set up to honor us in that way, and for us to
No.
honor ourselves. So, and that there's something exciting about that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And new, right, out of the
And
box.
yes, out of the box. Oh, what about being mindful for other learners, or mindful of other learners?
I'm thinking of that one in particular to ELC because we are such a new group.
Mhm.
And while I might know many of the people in ELC from other relationships like in Seoul, or just being in their buildings, or them coming to the ISD, there are other people I don't know yet, and I don't know us as a group, right? We've only had 2 meetings together and really only 4 hours, and that was all virtual. So there's a lot that I don't pick up on when we're just virtual, right? I can't sit down at a table with someone to get to know them that way, or watch body language. So there's a lot I feel that I've missed when being able to be mindful of other learners. So I'd like to be able to just get to know other people better in ELK over the next several months, of course. But being mindful of other learners to me means creating that relationship first, right? If I'm being mindful of someone, then spending time with them, getting to know them. And I look forward to be able to do that in ELK as time goes on. Just so that I can listen to them, and we can all figure out where we are on this journey together in coaching for equity, because it's so new for us as a group.
Yes. Yes. Oh my goodness. I appreciate that. And it's stirring up for me, just listening to you, courage to acknowledge that what I value sometimes, or what I hold as my values, I can't always, I find that I struggle with showing up in those values in the spaces that we're in, because the space may, and the people there, or the institutions we're a part of, may not hold those same values. Yet I, in taking care of myself, need to attend to my integrity and my walk, and how I'm showing up so that I can be at peace with myself and nurture what I value. And what I value is having compassion for myself and being able to extend that out to others. And the way I engage that is through observation, learning to observe, and letting that guide me to ask questions, as well as reflect back what I'm observing, and watching, having to watch, like, where's judgment coming up? Where am I tempted to come to a hard and fast conclusion, and get stuck there? And then likewise, where can I open up? Where can I find some cracks and fissures so that light and air and water can flow through myself, my thinking, my body, the space around me, so that I can be in better relationship. I can attend to the relationships that I'm in, and be curious about what they're going to bring, what a conversation will bring to light. And so, I have to be very intentional about attending to my values, because there are so many things that are pulling on my time and my attention, and there is an expectation in that I'm all the things to everybody at any given moment in time. So being mindful of other learners, I have to pay attention to the impact that that's having on me, and the tensions that it creates, and how I'm sending out that tension into my relationships, into the relationships that I'm in with other learners, because I'm a learner too. And I'm curious, and I want to learn from people, and I want to learn from what I'm reading, and I want to learn from the interactions that I'm having. But if I'm feeling all those tensions and I'm not attending to the impact they're having on me, and how I'm putting that into the space, then I'm not being mindful of other learners. I'm distracted by all these expectations that don't allow me to walk in integrity with what I value. And so I love how having this conversation, I'm realizing I'm going back through each one of the agreements each time.
Right.
It's like, I've got to take care of myself, or I have to ask myself, how am I taking care of myself so that I can engage fully and take risks and be mindful of other learners? Oh, the brilliance and the design of these, it just excites me.
Me too, because they build on each other.
Yeah.
So if I'm able to take care of myself and engage fully and take risks and be mindful of other learners and myself, then I can be open to possibilities.
Yes.
So I'm seeing that. I like to see that fourth one, open yourself to possibilities, as a sentence starter. So open myself to possibilities for, and fill in the blank. It could be change, learning, accepting growth, fill in the blank. So what am I open to today or for this month? So I like to think of that as a sentence starter. Like often we sometimes give, as a writing prompt or something in the classroom. I like giving that to myself as that. And I can get there if I do the other things first on these agreements.
Oh my goodness. Oh, and when I think, yes, to all the things. And just opening myself to the possibilities means I get to entertain creativity.
Yeah.
Creativity in myself and others, creativity in what we're co-constructing together, and be excited about it, find joy in it, and be mindful about where limitations are creeping up, because they like to creep up, and they press on, they provide us with triggers that set off our identity markers in ways that get us to show up habitually the same way over and over and over and over and over again. But when I think about how that gets perpetuated, it's when I'm not taking care of myself, I'm not engaging fully, and I'm not being mindful about others. So, just again, like you said, highlighting the relationship across all four of these and how they're constantly flowing through me at any given moment in time. And that I don't have to, be tempted to take up that familiar conversation or narrative of when the system changes or the system needs to change. I can pull back and say, wait a minute, the system is flowing through me. And when I'm attending to these four things differently, then the system flows differently. And maybe even I'm disrupting it altogether so that something new can happen. Because I too am a container, and I carry this with me, right? And so the state of the container impacts what comes through it, and the impact that it has on others. So, wow, I just appreciate just being able to reflect on all of that with you, as we co-create together.
Definitely.
That was this feels like a gift. And it has me in this place of like wanting to ask a question. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Okay. I've asked you a lot of questions, so I just want to make sure you're not tired. I'm not like in my 5-year-old state of why. I'm wondering, how you feel about giving our early literacy coaching collaborative time to pause, reflect, breathe, and connect to these four agreements, much like you and I just did.
Right.
And that means pause from our monthly synchronous meeting routine,
right?
So that there's space for that to happen. I wonder how you feel about that.
I feel good about that. I think it's especially important now in March of 2021 for all the reasons we mentioned earlier, that it's the COVID-versary, that so many people in Washtenaw County, educators, are busy getting their first dose of the vaccine, and so many are welcoming students back into buildings and all the challenges that brings. There's plenty of reasons always to be mindful and pause and breathe, but I think even more right now. March is bringing a lot to us.
Yes. Yes. So I'm so glad that you're welcoming to this idea of extending this gift to our collaborative. And knowing that the temptation, I just want to acknowledge that the temptation will be there to fill it this time, this gift of time to pause and breathe and connect with yourself, these agreements, the temptation will be there to fill it with all the things that want to come in and take up that time and take up that space. And I just want to acknowledge that the choice ultimately will be yours, but just know that you will have the time to attend to yourself for the month of March, to pause, to breathe, to reflect, and to connect. And so leaving the question of how will you do that? How will you fill that time so that you are attending to how you're living into these 4 agreements? So with that said, do you have any more thoughts, Melissa, about what the time could be filled with that are being offered in service of living into those agreements?
Well, and I like that you said, well, let's not feel pressure to fill the time, right? To do all of these things, because the beauty of it is that we have options and we have choices. All of us do. And we've just listed some here. I mean, remembering that we're such a new group, a lot of the things on this list have to do with continuing to build our relationships. And right now, we are able to do it virtually right now, but still, it's a way to build relationships. So I think looking at this list, that's some of what I tried to put on here were things that were going to further our relationships so that when we do meet again in April, we're in a different place individually and as a group.
I appreciate that. Because what I also hear in that is that there's an invitation to take responsibility for ourselves. And that's an important thing to acknowledge. And to know that you are in a community, you're in community with where you're supported with doing that.
Yeah.
And there is a recognition that taking responsibility is attending to taking care of yourself, so that all those other layers of the agreements, the 4 agreements, can take hold. So I love this list that I'm seeing on the screen now, and knowing that these are suggested possibilities and that there are probably many more out there, given that we have, last count, 40 plus people in our collaborative now.
Yep.
So that's 40 plus possibilities for how you see these suggestions, as well as others that you would add to that list. Just knowing that the list does not need to be exhaustive. Pausing and breathing is taking care of self and attending to the rest of the agreements just fine. So with that said, I'm excited. I'm excited and I'm grateful that I've been able to have this conversation with you, Melissa, and be honest and transparent and vulnerable, and that I felt that you valued what I was able to give to you. And so I'm just saying thank you. I appreciate you for receiving that.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for the time and for listening and sharing. I do look forward to seeing our group again in April when we come back together on the 6th.
Yes, me too. So see you all April 6th, and find joy in this moment for you.
Take care.
Take care.